Everything that is written, carved on the Shabaka Stone is what we teach in our science classes today. What is important is how encompassing this story is on the Shabaka Stone. And as we move through this process, we look at the second philosophy, which is the essences of pre-existing order and arrangement, where the Shabaka Stone and our ancestors spoke about the early formers of all of the molecules and all of the atoms coming into existence. The Nun, Nunet, the Ha, the Ha-het, the Kak, Kaket, and the Amun and Amunet. In other words, they talked about the Nun being matter, the Nunet being space, the Ha being infinity, and the Ha-het is finity. The Kak is the darkness, Kaket is the light. The Amen is the hidden, and the Amenet is the revealed. The male and the female entities. What's important is that our ancestors understood you cannot have a male without a female. So there was never a conception of a male-only God. And as we travel throughout Africa and look at the many, many thousands of nations that reside in Africa, the common theme is that all things come into being by the coming together of the male and the female. And it brings forward life. And the third philosophy dealt with the essences of order and arrangement. Shu and Tefnut. Shu is the male and it is air. Tefnut is female and moisture. Air and moisture. This is science. And it's very important that we don't get in so deep inside of a theology or a religion that we don't see the sacred science behind this story. Shu and Tefnut give birth to Nut and to Geb. Nut is female. Nut is the sky. Geb is male and Geb is the earth. So their perception of life did not come from a mother earth. It came from a father earth and a mother sky, because that is where light and heat energy comes from, that comes down to our planet and creates the organic life. And then Nut and Geb give birth to Asar, Aset, Nebetet, Seton. Asar is the original father. Aset is determination and the original mother. Nebetet is the oracle reader, the one that can see things that others cannot see. And Seton are the forces that destroy. Seton, where we get the word Satan from, is not a bad thing. It's just what exists as a destroyer. And we know in life that sometimes in order to construct, you must destruct. So there is a time for the destroyer. But the destroyer must come at a time when he is needed. Now Asar and Aset give birth to Heru, who is the resurrection and the light. So the Shabaka Stone takes us through a dynamic process of coming into being that is called Kepra, represented by the dung beetle. And the dung beetle represents this process of coming. And this story then leads to an understanding of the science of what we're talking about. The Sphinx was the face of a black woman. The Sphinx is not a man. It's the face of a woman and the body of a lioness, because they believe that the year that it was born, created 10,000 years ago, before the pyramids. In fact, the pyramids were built there to complement the Sphinx that had been there for generations, if not millennia. It was built during the cusp of the constellations of Leo and Virgo. So Virgo was the woman's head and Leo was the body of the lion or the lioness. And so we know that the pyramids were astronomically inclined. We know that one of the functions was to trace the constellations. We know that the three pyramids that exist right now actually are in direct relationship to the three stars in Orion's belt. They perfectly match up. So we know that it was done for astronomical reasons. We know that every entrance to those three pyramids, Khufu, Khafra, Menkaure, father, son, grandson, are all on the north side of the pyramid. And when you go into the gallery that look up, if you had a telescope, all three of those northern entrances aimed directly at the North Star, which became the way in which they could track the constellations in the heavens. Now, Count Volta is going to study science, which tells us that we have a great amount of information that says that the Kemites had the ability to create electricity, and that in fact the ankh that you see in the hands of many of the pictographs of many of the netchers actually was a lamp. Now, what is the evidence of this? It's written, African Origins of Electromagnetism. Her-Em-Akhet goes through a wonderful exploration of the science of our ancestors. We understand this and we know this. So with this information, when you look at what Volta is going to come back, and what does he get credit for? He gets credit for creating the battery. And the battery was the Djed column that the ankh was put on that recharged the light in the ankh. The Djed column was the actual recharger for the ankh itself as light. He comes back and gets credit for inventing the battery.